One of Facebook's creators is calling on the government to break up the social media giant. Chris Hughes helped Mark Zuckerberg found Facebook in their Harvard dorm room in 2004. Hughes left Facebook in 2007. In a New York Times opinion piece, Hughes writes he's angry that, in his view, Zuckerberg's focus on growth led him to sacrifice security and civility for clicks. He calls Zuckerberg's power unprecedented and un-American. The company has more than 6 billion monthly active users across all of its platforms, and that includes Facebook, WhatsApp, Messenger, and Instagram. Facebook released a statement that says, in part, quote, accountability of tech companies can only be achieved through the painstaking introduction of new rules for the internet. Chris Hughes is with us. Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Un-American, that's pretty tough.
I think so. I think we have a long tradition in America of holding power accountable. I mean, after all, our Constitution is built on checks and balances. And sometimes folks in the private sector who are CEOs of companies just get too big. So just like we've done with Standard Oil, AT&T, we say this is a monopoly, a market is frozen, there is no competition, and there's no accountability, and the government needs to step in and break it up.
Right. Your point is there should be a check on this power, but why do you have to break up Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp? Why break it up?
Because I think most Americans know that the best way to hold a company accountable is competition. What keeps happening now is there's another privacy scandal or another election scandal, seemingly every week, at least every month, and then people get outraged. They get so angry, they say, oh, I'm leaving Facebook, I'm going to Instagram. Not realizing that Instagram is owned by Facebook.
Yes.
And then they become resigned to the fact that we can't do anything. So we can't vote with our feet, we can't vote with our eyeballs, and so
you say
the government to step in.
Well, of course, we can
Where
just
would you
not go
go?
on Facebook.
Well,
I would go to my book, or I would go to my walk outside, or I would go to my friend on the telephone.
Listen, I would love to, I think most Americans would love to say, oh, I don't really need social media, but that's like saying I don't really need my iPhone. I think that, or I don't really need email.
Well, you can get a Samsung.
Technically, you can, well, exactly, there is competition. You can go to Samsung. With Facebook, there's really nowhere else to go. Facebook has 85% of the revenue in the social networking sector. Are you going to go to LinkedIn?
But I guess the thing is, you're saving Americans from themselves, is essentially what you're saying.
I don't think that's quite right. I think Americans want a competitive network where they have options. Otherwise, there's going to be scandal after scandal, and that we need competition. You know, Adam Smith was the first to say markets are productive, they're innovative, when there are players that are vying for attention. And this is what it was like in the early days of Facebook. You know, after we started it, there was MySpace, there was Friendster, LiveJournal, Tumblr. We can go through a long list, and that made us better. It meant that we had to develop features, keep the site secure, think about where else users can go, and that competition just doesn't exist.
Right.
You make
You're
a
saying
point
that-
of saying that Mark is a good, kind person, well, and then you go on to slam the company, but yet you don't believe that there's something nefarious going on at Facebook, or do you?
No, I don't. I say in the piece that, and I feel that Mark is a good, kind person. We've been friends for 15, 16 years at this point.
Do you
and
think
I
you're still
also think he
friends?
has too much power. Listen, I don't know. I really don't know if we're going to be friends. I think there are some.
My vote would be probably not.
Probably
Chris.
not, but
Yeah.
there are some friendships where you have disagreements
But
and
have
big
you
ones,
reached
and you
out to
still
him?
stay friends.
Have you reached out to him? You mentioned that you talked to him in 2017. Because I'm curious, when did you realize there was a problem? And did you go to him and say, Houston, we have a real problem. You need to do something here.
Yeah, well, I first became uncomfortable with what was happening on Facebook in the summer of 2016 in the
After
election.
the election, yeah.
And I did not, in that summer, write a note. I didn't. After that election, it became increasingly clear that there was a problem, and then the Cambridge Analytica scandal happens. And in that intervening period, I did spend some time with Mark and talked about some of my concerns, but because we've been friends first, and I haven't been at the company in over a decade, we talked about our families more than anything else. After Cambridge Analytica, I did start to speak up. And we've had some exchanges since then about what's happened at the company. So this has been a gradual process for me too. It's not like today I'm, the critic, and yesterday I was a cheerleader. I, like a lot of people, I think, marveled at Facebook's growth and have only become critical in the past two to 3 years.
Other Facebook employees, or former Facebook employees, are also speaking up too. You're not a lone voice out there.
Yeah, there are a good number, particularly of folks in the early days, because I think we all feel some sense of responsibility.
Because
we were part of the early days of Facebook. I mean, I will be the first to say I helped create Newsfeed. My name is on the patent, and Newsfeed, I think, in many instances has led to major problems. I mean, I think it helped
because there's
the rise of nationalist leaders, fake news.
The argument is that there was an original sin, which is that grabbing attention and prioritizing attention over all these other values was embedded in its original design. That this is just the late flowering of something that was there in the beginning.
I think listen, embedding. I think you're right to say that all these apps were built to attract more and more attention. And I don't know if I would say that's an original sin, but it's definitely a trade-off which has, I think, been pushed too far now, because now Americans are paying for these services with their data and with their attention. An hour a day on average for Facebook, 53 minutes for Instagram. And again, I don't think that would be necessarily a problem if there was an alternative where you could go and pay to not have your data collected or pay to not have advertisements, but we have no competition.
Right. Your point is there's no market accountability. It is a monopoly, and that's why you're saying that the government has to come in. Do you think lawmakers actually have the tech savvy or understanding in order to do this?
I think some do, and there's a growing movement of them. Last year in Mark's testimony, I think unfortunately, a lot of people came away with the narrative that Mark had it together, the government. There are quite a number of folks who are anything but clueless in the government. And it's not just, it's Elizabeth Warren, yes, but it's also people like Ted Cruz. David Cicilline's a congressman in the House. There is leadership coming out of the woodwork. And I will say, not just on Facebook, but on monopolies in general. 3/4 of American industries have become more concentrated. And I think there's accountability coming.
And just real quickly, you say that you're worried that Mark has surrounded himself with people that reinforce his beliefs instead of challenging them. What role does Sheryl Sandberg play in that?
You know, I haven't been at the company in 10 years, so I don't have any view into their private conversations, but I do think that there's a sense of we have to self-protect over there, which is changing a little bit, but I think needs to change quite a bit more.
Right. Maybe the two of you all should sit down and talk. He clearly knows your capabilities and abilities. Would you be open to that?
Of course. Yeah. Mark's been a friend. I care about him, and I also think he has too much power.
Gayle is available to moderate that conversation.
That would be.
We can pass on
You're
her
raising
side.
some interesting points. You are. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks for having me.